Hercules, Perseus, Achilles, to Theseus. The heroes are the best-known part of Greek mythology. But what makes a hero? Having monsters to fight. And when it comes to the Greeks, they had the strangest, most terrifying monsters mythology has to offer. So here are some of the scariest monsters in Greek mythology. The Cyclopes. Not Scott Summers, but rather a gigantic humanoid race born from Gaia, the Earth. The Cyclops was known for the single large eye that was set in the middle of its forehead. They are said to possess great strength and ferocity, and it was for this reason the Cyclops were thrown into the pits of Tartarus by their father Uranus. The monsters remained imprisoned when the Titan Cronus overthrew Uranus and took his place as ruler of the universe. It was only when the Olympians came to power that the mighty Zeus released the monsters and gifted the three Cyclops, Arges, Staripes, and Brontes, with weapons of lightning and thunder, becoming the forgers of his thunderbolts. The Cyclops are often portrayed as man-eaters, with Homer's rendition of Polyphemus, with Polyphemus eating 2 men a day. Polyphemus, however, was ultimately outwitted by Odysseus, who blinded him by plunging a sharpened log into his eye. The Chimera. The chimera was a ferocious, fire-breathing monstrosity that possessed the head and the body of a lion, a goat head emerged from its back, and its tail that ends with a snake's head. The chimera is traditionally considered to have been a female and was said to have given birth to the Sphinx and the Nemean lion. Seeing the chimera was believed to be an omen of doom, especially shipwrecks or volcanic eruptions. There are other forms the creature can take, so long as it's an amalgamation of multiple animals. Sirens. Sirens are amongst the most famous characters from Greek mythology, for their encounters with Greek heroes and of course known for their song of sirens, the melodies that will lure the unwary mariners to their death. But sirens don't just appear in the form of seductive women, but they appear in different forms. Many times they are seen as bird-like creatures with the heads of beautiful women. Other times they are gorgeous women with the legs of birds, sometimes with wings and sometimes without. But no matter what they look like, the sirens were deadly, causing countless sailors to steer their ships into razor-sharp rocks. Talk about lonely sailors imagining birds as women at sea, losing control of their ship and taking down the whole crew because of his procrastination. What do you think about this one? The Charybdis and Scylla. Now the Charybdis and the Scylla are actually 2 different monsters, but they lived on opposite sides of a narrow strait, and have become so synonymous that it's impossible to talk about one without mentioning the other. There are no explicit descriptions of the Charybdis, but that it is a ferocious sea monster that lives under a rock on one side of a narrow strait. But what it does is terrifying. The Charybdis regularly swallows massive amounts of water, which creates monstrous whirlpools that are capable of destroying an entire ship. Similarly, the Scylla lives on the opposite side of the narrow strait and is believed to have been a many-headed sea monster that fed on the flesh of sailors who unwittingly traveled too close to the beast's lair. The phrase "between a Charybdis and a Scylla" now means being stuck between 2 dangerous decisions with no apparent solution. A story of the Charybdis and Scylla are found within the pages of the Odyssey. Odysseus is forced to navigate the narrow strait during his travels and decides to travel closer to the Scylla, so as to avoid the massive whirlpool of the Charybdis. But unfortunately, 6 of Odysseus's men were swallowed up by the monster and eaten alive. Odysseus was left stranded on a raft and without much choice attempted to sail past the side of Charybdis. His raft got sucked into the massive whirlpool, but Odysseus himself managed to stay afloat by holding on to a fig tree whose branches were dangling from shore. Odysseus eventually recovered his raft and sailed away quickly. The Minotaur, a grotesque abomination that possessed the body of a man and the head of a bull. The Minotaur is best remembered for devouring flesh and his cryptic home deep within the confines of the Twisted Labyrinth. The labyrinth was an impossible maze constructed by the inventor Daedalus. It was said to have been located under the palace of Knossos, the home of King Minos of Crete. The story goes that King Minos, the ruler of Crete, lost his son Androgeus when the boy was murdered in Athens. In revenge, King Minos waged war on the Athenians, eventually finding victory. As penance for the murder of Androgeus, every year the Athenians were forced to send 7 young men and 7 maidens to the island of Crete, where they would be released into the labyrinth and devoured by the Minotaur. It was then that Theseus, the hero of Athens, volunteered to be sent to Crete as a sacrifice to the monster. Upon arriving, Theseus, aided by Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos, navigates the labyrinth and discovers Minotaur sleeping in the center of the vast dungeon. By surprise, Theseus attacks the Minotaur and slays the monster with ease, rescuing the other Athenians along with the princess Ariadne, and escapes Minos' palace, making a hasty retreat to Athens under the cover of night. The Hydra, a multiple-headed serpentine beast, the Lernaean hydra was claimed to be the gatekeeper at one of the entrances to Hades, the underworld. A creature whose venom was so dangerous that even the breath exhaled by Hydra would be lethal to any man. Slicing off one of its heads only led to another 2 sprouting in its original place. To defeat it, Hercules sliced off a head and then used his torch to cauterize the stump before more heads would appear. Medusa, the Gorgons. Gorgons most often applies to the 3 Gorgon sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and perhaps the most infamous Greek mythological creature, Medusa. A monstrous creature with the ability to turn to stone any person who gazed upon her face. Medusa had an upper body of a human, a lower body of a serpent, and hair made of writhing venomous snakes. However, Medusa was actually originally a human, one so beautiful that the god Poseidon took advantage of her in the temple of Athena. Instead of finding displeasure with Poseidon, Athena decided to punish Medusa, turning her into the creature we all know today. Medusa was eventually slain by the hero Perseus, who was bade by his stepfather to retrieve the head of the monster. Using a mirrored shield that was given to him by Athena, Perseus viewed Medusa's reflection so as to not look directly at the monster. Perseus would use the head of Medusa as a weapon against the enemies, until he eventually presented it to Athena, who attached it to the front of her shield. Cerberus, Hades' loyal guard dog, a massive hound with 3 heads and the tail of a serpent, and supposedly snakes poking out from various parts of its body, guards the gates of the underworld and ensures no soul escapes. It was the brother of the Lernaean hydra, the chimera, and Orthrus, a 2-headed dog that guarded the cattle Geryon. It was said that the beast only had an appetite for living flesh, and so would not allow the deceased spirits to pass, while consuming any living mortal who was foolish enough to come near him. As the 12th and final labor that Hercules was to perform to recompense for his past sins, the Mycenaean king Eurystheus ordered Hercules to enter the underworld, wrestle the beast using no weapons, and bring the Cerberus back to the surface world alive. Hercules managed to tackle the beast using his great strength, threw the animal over his shoulder, and dragged him back to the mortal world. But it is said upon seeing Cerberus, Eurystheus was so terrified that he hid in a large vase and begged Hercules to return the hellhound back to Hades. And on the top of the list is Typhon. Hailed as one of the deadliest creatures in Greek mythology, Typhon was supposedly a gigantic beast whose head touched the stars when standing upright. He was known as the father of all monsters. He was birthed from Gaia, the earth, and Tartarus, the depths of hell. He was humanoid from waist up. His shoulders bore the heads of 100 snakes with wings upon his back, while his legs were 2 coiled serpents. Instead of fingers, several dragon heads erupted from his hands. He was said to have wings that when spread would blot out the sun. Fire flashed from his eyes, striking fear into the heart of any living creature. Typhon was so mighty that the only conceivable opponent to defy him was Zeus himself. In the great battle that ensued, the Olympians ran away, but Zeus stood firm. The battle was so fierce it caused countless earthquakes and tsunamis. Zeus cast 100 well-aimed thunderbolts to the head of the monster, and threw Typhon down into the pits of Tartarus, where he was sealed away for all time. However, the rage of this monster would not be contained. His fury would manifest in the form of volcanic eruptions on the earth, and in this way, Typhon continues to terrorize humanity from his earthly prison. If you liked our video, don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel for more videos like this one.